For 10 years, Sarah had devoted her life to Ryan. They had met in college, fallen in love, and built what she believed was the perfect marriage. While Ryan focused on climbing the corporate ladder, Sarah quietly sacrificed her own dreams to support him. She gave up promising career opportunities, managed their home, cooked his favorite meals, and stood by his side through every challenge. To her, Ryan's success was their success. But over the past few months, something had changed. Ryan started coming home later and later, always blaming long meetings and demanding projects. He guarded his phone obsessively, taking it everywhere he went. Sometimes Sarah caught the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume lingering on his clothes, but she convinced herself she was overthinking. After all, she trusted him completely. One humid summer afternoon, Sarah decided to surprise Ryan by bringing him homemade lunch at his office. She had spent hours preparing his favorite slow-cooked beef stew and carefully packed it into the pastel blue thermos she had bought for their wedding anniversary. As she entered the towering office building, memories of happier days filled her mind. She remembered Ryan's smile when he first became vice president and how proud she had been of everything they had achieved together. Carrying the warm meal, she made her way toward his office, expecting nothing more than a quick visit before returning home. When she discovered Ryan wasn't in his office, she headed toward the employee break room. Just as she was about to walk away, a familiar voice stopped her cold. It was Ryan. At first, she thought she must be mistaken, but then she heard him speaking softly to another woman. Moments later came laughter, whispers, and sounds that shattered her world. Frozen in place, Sarah realized her husband was inside with his secretary. The man she had loved for a decade was betraying her only a few feet away. Her heart pounded violently, yet strangely no tears came. Instead of bursting through the door or causing a scene, Sarah quietly pulled out her phone. With trembling hands but a clear mind, she began recording. She captured enough evidence to expose the truth, all while maintaining a calmness she never knew she possessed. Then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife even deeper, her phone vibrated. A text message from Ryan appeared on the screen. "Don't bring lunch today. I got pulled into a last-minute meeting." Sarah stared at the words in disbelief. While he was in the break room with another woman, he was still lying to her without hesitation. In that moment, something inside her broke forever. The loving wife who had spent years putting Ryan first disappeared, replaced by a woman who finally saw the truth. And standing alone in that hallway, holding the lunch she had prepared with love, Sarah realized her marriage was already over. Sarah remained frozen outside the break room, her phone still clutched tightly in her hand. The video had stopped recording, but the voices inside continued. Through the thin door, she could hear every word with painful clarity. Ryan's voice, once the source of her comfort and security, now sounded unfamiliar and cruel. He laughed softly as he spoke about her, dismissing the woman who had spent 10 years loving him. He mocked her routines, her devotion, and the homemade meals she prepared every day. To him, she was predictable, boring, and no longer exciting. The young secretary eagerly joined in making sarcastic comments about Sarah without even knowing her. She spoke as if Sarah were nothing more than an obstacle standing in the way of her fantasy romance. Every word felt like a knife twisting deeper into Sarah's chest. Yet somehow the pain no longer felt sharp. It felt cold. For a few long seconds, Sarah stood completely still. Her eyes remained fixed on the video she had just recorded. 3 minutes and 17 seconds. 10 years of love reduced to a single piece of evidence. Her finger hovered over the screen as memories flooded her mind. She remembered late nights studying together in college, their tiny apartment after graduation, the sacrifices she had made for Ryan's career, the dreams she had abandoned so he could pursue his. She remembered comforting him during failures, celebrating his successes, and believing every promise he ever made. 10 years. 10 years of loyalty, trust, and devotion. And on the other side of that door, Ryan was throwing it all away without a second thought. In that moment, Sarah realized there was nothing left to save. Her phone vibrated again. The company Slack application sat quietly on the screen. Ryan had added her to the workspace years ago so she could stay informed about company events. She rarely used it, but today it suddenly became the most powerful weapon she possessed. Sarah opened the app and stared at the company-wide channel. Hundreds of employees were members. Marketing staff, executives, human resources, department managers, interns, everyone. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it echoing in her ears. She knew exactly what would happen if she posted the video. There would be no turning back. Her marriage would end. Ryan's reputation would collapse. The secretary's secret affair would become public knowledge. The comfortable life she had built would disappear forever. For one brief moment, she hesitated. Then she remembered the text Ryan had just sent her. "Don't bring lunch today. I'm stuck in a meeting." The lie was so effortless, so casual, so practiced. Sarah pressed the upload button. The progress bar began to move. 10%, 20%, 50%. Her breathing became shallow. 70%, 90%, 100%. Sent successfully. The video appeared in the channel. Silence. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Then the entire company exploded. Messages flooded the screen faster than she could read them. Employees demanded to know if the video was real. Others recognized Ryan immediately. Some identified the woman as Chloe, the new executive assistant. Shocked reactions, emojis, screenshots, and frantic comments appeared one after another. Managers entered the conversation. Human resources joined the channel. People who had never spoken before suddenly had something to say. Within minutes, hundreds of employees had already seen the video. Some tried deleting messages. Others attempted to stop the spread. It was useless. The evidence was already everywhere. Sarah muted the notifications and slipped her phone into her purse. Calmly, she walked away from the break room and headed toward the stairwell. Behind her, the affair that had been hidden in the shadows was being dragged into the light for everyone to see. She descended the stairs slowly, one floor at a time, her footsteps echoing against the concrete walls. Her phone began vibrating almost immediately. Ryan was calling. She ignored it. The phone rang again, and again, and again. By the time she reached the lobby, she had more than a dozen missed calls. A message appeared on the screen. "Sarah, answer me. Something terrible just happened." A bitter smile touched her lips. Of course something terrible had happened. For the first time in years, Ryan was finally experiencing the consequences of his own actions. Outside the building, the summer sun blazed overhead. People continued walking through the busy streets, completely unaware that a corporate scandal was unfolding above them. Then, suddenly, movement caught her eye. The glass doors burst open and Ryan came running out of the building. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was disheveled. Panic was written across his face. He spun around wildly, searching the sidewalk, scanning every direction like a man whose entire world had just collapsed. The confident executive vice president was gone. In his place stood a desperate husband watching his carefully constructed life burn to the ground. And for the first time since discovering the affair, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt all day. Not sadness. Not anger. Not revenge. Relief. Because she finally understood that the marriage she had spent years trying to protect had already died long before she pressed the send button. By the next morning, the video had spread far beyond the walls of Ryan's company. What had started as a private act of betrayal was now the center of a full-blown corporate scandal. Employees shared screenshots in private chats, rumors circulated through industry circles, and within hours, clients and business partners had heard about the affair. Executives scrambled to contain the damage, but it was too late. Ryan had spent years building a reputation as a disciplined, trustworthy leader, yet a 3-minute video had exposed a completely different side of him. Questions about his judgment, professionalism, and integrity began pouring in from every direction. The promotion he had worked so hard to secure was immediately placed under review, and major stakeholders started distancing themselves from him. The man who once commanded respect in every meeting suddenly became the subject of whispers in every hallway. The fallout was equally devastating for Chloe, the secretary. At first, she tried to avoid the attention, but there was nowhere left to hide. Human Resources launched an internal investigation, and her colleagues stopped speaking to her except when absolutely necessary. Every glance felt like a judgment. Every conversation seemed to stop when she entered the room. The fantasy she had believed in quickly fell apart. Ryan was no longer the charming executive who promised her a future. He was a desperate man fighting to save himself. Day by day, the pressure mounted until Chloe became emotionally exhausted, isolated, and overwhelmed by regret. The affair that once felt exciting had become a public humiliation she could not escape. Meanwhile, the shockwaves reached both families. Sarah's parents learned the truth through frantic phone calls and social media rumors. Her mother broke down in tears, unable to understand how the man they had welcomed into their family could betray their daughter so cruelly. Her father took the news even harder. Furious and heartbroken, his blood pressure spiked, forcing him to spend the night under medical observation. The sight of her strong, protective father lying in a hospital bed filled Sarah with both sadness and determination. Across town, Ryan's parents were facing their own nightmare. His father was furious at what his son had done, while his mother desperately tried to find a way to repair the damage. But deep down, even they knew that some mistakes could not be undone. As Ryan's world collapsed around him, panic replaced arrogance. He called Sarah relentlessly, sometimes dozens of times a day. When she didn't answer, he sent long messages begging for forgiveness. He claimed it had been a mistake, a moment of weakness, something that meant nothing. He insisted that he still loved her and promised he would do anything to fix their marriage. When his calls and messages went unanswered, he showed up at their house. When Sarah wasn't there, he went to her parents' home. When that failed, he waited outside her friend's apartment for hours, hoping for a chance to explain. The confident executive who once believed he controlled every situation had become a desperate man chasing someone who no longer wanted to hear his voice. But Sarah remained unmoved. Every missed call, every emotional voicemail, every desperate apology only reminded her of the lies he had told so effortlessly. She blocked his numbers one by one. She refused to meet him. She refused to listen to excuses. For years, she had been the person who comforted Ryan whenever life became difficult. Now, for the first time, she chose herself instead. Her family supported her decision. Her friends stood beside her, and with each passing day, she felt a little stronger, a little freer, and a little less connected to the man she once loved. Eventually, Ryan managed to reach her through a new phone number. His voice trembled as he begged for one final conversation. He spoke about their 10 years together, their shared memories, and everything they had built. He cried. He apologized. He promised to change. When he finally stopped talking, Sarah answered with a calmness that cut deeper than any scream ever could. "I don't hate you because you cheated," she said quietly. A long silence followed. Then she delivered the words that ended everything. "I hate you because you made me look like a fool. You lied to my face every day while I loved you with everything I had. You didn't just betray our marriage. You betrayed my trust, my loyalty, and my belief in who you were." For the first time, Ryan had no response, because deep down he knew she was right. And in that moment, as his career crumbled, his reputation vanished, and his marriage slipped away forever, Ryan finally understood the true cost of his choices. The affair had lasted only a short time, but the consequences would follow him for the rest of his life. In the days following the scandal, Sarah finally allowed herself to stop surviving and start healing. The first person who stood beside her was Jess, her best friend since college. Without hesitation, Jess opened her apartment, and her heart giving Sarah a safe place to stay while her entire world was falling apart. She listened without judgment, sat with her through sleepless nights, and reminded her of something Sarah had forgotten long ago, that she was more than someone's wife. Whenever Sarah doubted herself, Jess was there to pull her back up, refusing to let her drown in heartbreak. For the first time in years, Sarah felt what unconditional friendship truly looked like. As the initial shock faded, Sarah began reflecting on the life she had built around Ryan. The more she looked back, the more she realized how much of herself she had sacrificed along the way. She had abandoned career opportunities to support his ambitions. She had put her own dreams on hold while helping him climb the corporate ladder. She had spent years taking care of their home, managing every detail of their lives, and making sure Ryan never had to worry about anything outside of work. Even the memory of the child they had lost years earlier resurfaced. She remembered the pain, the grief, and the countless nights she cried herself to sleep while trying to stay strong for both of them. Looking back now, she understood that she had carried the weight of their marriage for far longer than she realized. But instead of allowing regret to consume her, Sarah made a decision. If her old life had ended, then she would build a new one. She dusted off her portfolio, updated projects she had completed years earlier, and spent countless hours polishing her work. Every day became a step toward independence. She sent out resumes, researched companies, and prepared for interviews. There were moments of doubt. 3 years away from the workforce felt like a lifetime. The industry had changed. Technology had evolved. Yet Sarah refused to let fear stop her. She stayed up late studying new design trends, reviewing old projects, and reminding herself that talent does not disappear simply because life takes a different path. During this journey, Sarah found strength in her family. When she visited her parents, she expected disappointment or concern. Instead, she found unwavering support. Her mother embraced her with tears in her eyes and assured her that she would always have a place to call home. Her father, despite his anger toward Ryan and his own health struggles, made it clear that his daughter's happiness mattered more than any marriage. Sitting with them, Sarah realized something powerful. For years, she had been afraid of losing everything if her marriage failed, but she had never truly been alone. Her family had been standing behind her the entire time, waiting to catch her if she fell. Not everyone, however, accepted her decision so easily. One evening, Ryan's mother asked to meet. The woman who had once treated Sarah like a daughter now sat across from her with tears in her eyes. She begged Sarah to reconsider the divorce. She spoke about 10 years of history, about forgiveness, about second chances. She pleaded with her to delete the video, arguing that Ryan's career and future were being destroyed. For a moment, Sarah felt the familiar pull of guilt. This woman had shown her kindness for years, but kindness could not erase betrayal. As she listened, Sarah realized that everyone seemed concerned about Ryan's suffering, yet almost no one asked about hers. When the conversation finally ended, Sarah made her choice clear. She would not delete the video. She would not reconcile. She would not sacrifice herself to protect the man who had shattered her trust. Ryan's consequences belonged to Ryan. His reputation, his career, and his future were the results of his own decisions. Sarah had spent too many years putting everyone else's needs before her own. For once she chose herself. It was not revenge. It was self-respect. Then, on an ordinary afternoon, everything changed. After weeks of preparation, interviews, and uncertainty, Sarah received a phone call from Azure Design. Her hands trembled as she answered. The hiring manager's voice was warm and professional. They were offering her the position. For a moment, Sarah couldn't speak. Then tears filled her eyes. Not tears of sadness. Not tears of betrayal. Tears of hope. The job represented more than employment. It represented freedom. Independence. A future that belonged entirely to her. It was proof that her life had not ended when her marriage collapsed. In many ways, it was only beginning. As she hung up the phone, she looked at her reflection in the window and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The frightened wife who had discovered her husband's affair was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone wiser, someone determined. That job offer became the turning point of her story. It was the moment Sarah stopped seeing herself as a victim of betrayal and started seeing herself as the author of her own future. Ryan had taken away her trust, but he had not taken away her talent. He had broken her heart, but he had not broken her spirit. And for the first time in a very long time, Sarah felt genuinely excited about tomorrow. Monday morning arrived with a sense of possibility Sarah had not felt in years. Standing in front of the mirror, dressed in a professional suit and holding a portfolio she had worked tirelessly to rebuild, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Just weeks earlier, she had been a heartbroken wife watching her marriage collapse. Now she was walking into a new chapter of her life. The office of Azure Design buzzed with energy and creativity. Sunlight poured through the large windows. Designers collaborated around whiteboards, and conversations about new projects filled the air. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt excited about the future. Her new colleagues welcomed her warmly, treating her not as a woman recovering from a failed marriage, but as a talented professional with valuable experience and ideas. Every unfamiliar face represented a new opportunity, every project a chance to prove herself. It didn't take long for Sarah to demonstrate that her skills had never disappeared. Years away from the workforce had not erased her creativity, discipline, or passion. During her very first major assignment, she proposed a bold branding concept that immediately caught the attention of both her team and the client. While others focused on conventional solutions, Sarah brought fresh perspectives and innovative ideas that stood out. Her designs combined emotional storytelling with strategic thinking, creating a powerful connection between the brand and its audience. The project was a tremendous success. The client loved her vision management, praised her leadership, and her coworkers quickly began seeking her advice and collaboration. For the first time in years, Sarah was being recognized not as someone's wife, but as an accomplished professional in her own right. Every compliment, every successful presentation, and every completed project slowly rebuilt the confidence that had been buried beneath years of sacrifice and self-doubt. Meanwhile, Ryan's life continued to unravel. The company investigation concluded, and the consequences were severe. The affair had destroyed the trust of his colleagues, clients, and superiors. The promotion he once dreamed of was gone. His reputation within the industry had been permanently damaged. Opportunities disappeared one after another as word of the scandal spread. Friends who once admired him became distant. Business contacts stopped returning his calls. Even his own family struggled to look at him the same way. The life he had risked everything for turned out to be nothing more than an illusion. In trying to satisfy his ego, Ryan had lost his marriage, his career, and the respect of nearly everyone around him. Several weeks later, the final divorce proceedings took place. Sitting across from Ryan in the lawyer's office, Sarah felt surprisingly calm. There was no anger left, no desire for revenge, no urge to argue or make him suffer. The legal documents were reviewed, the assets divided fairly, and the final signatures placed on the paperwork. The marriage that had defined a decade of her life officially came to an end. Ryan attempted one last apology, his voice filled with regret and desperation. But Sarah simply listened in silence. She no longer needed explanations. She no longer needed closure from him. The closure had come from within herself. As she walked out of the lawyer's office and into the afternoon sunlight, she felt lighter than she had in years. It was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of a better one. As the months passed, Sarah discovered something unexpected. She stopped thinking about Ryan altogether. The anger that had once consumed her faded away naturally. She no longer checked for updates about his life. She no longer wondered whether he regretted his choices. His failures no longer brought her satisfaction, and his struggles no longer affected her emotions. The opposite of love was not hate. It was indifference. And Sarah had finally reached that point. She had reclaimed her peace. The man who once occupied every corner of her mind had become nothing more than a distant memory. Her own life, meanwhile, continued moving forward. Her career flourished. New projects brought exciting challenges and opportunities. She built strong friendships with her coworkers and deepened her bond with Jess, whose unwavering support had helped her survive the darkest period of her life. She spent more time with her parents, appreciating their unconditional love in ways she never had before. She traveled, explored hobbies she had neglected for years, and gradually created a life centered on her own happiness rather than someone else's expectations. For the first time, every decision belonged entirely to her. One evening after a successful project launch, Sarah sat alone on her apartment balcony overlooking the city skyline. The lights glittered in the distance, and a gentle breeze carried the sounds of life below. She thought about everything that had happened over the past year: the betrayal, the heartbreak, the tears, the fear, and the uncertainty. For a moment, she reflected on the woman she had been before discovering the affair. Back then, she believed her happiness depended on her marriage. She believed losing Ryan would mean losing everything. She could not have been more wrong. A small smile appeared on her face. The greatest victory had never been exposing Ryan. It had never been watching his reputation collapse. It had never been winning the divorce. The greatest victory was something much more important. She had found herself again. The ambitious young woman who once had dreams. The talented designer who had buried her potential. The strong person who survived heartbreak and chose to keep moving forward. Looking out at the city lights, Sarah finally understood the lesson that had taken her years to learn. The best thing wasn't that I successfully got revenge on Ryan, she thought. The best thing was that I found myself again. And with that realization, she smiled, closed the door behind her, and stepped confidently into the future that was waiting for her.